It could be sacks and turnovers galore for the Sun Devils defense in 2024.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrats36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the season starts. We are at 829. We got an uphill battle, but I know that with the best fans in the world, we can get there and we'll find a way to celebrate. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The playoffs are gone and sports don't sport like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the defense again after we looked yesterday. But if you tuned into yesterday's podcast, and if you haven't, go ahead and check that one out. We preview each level of the defense, including names to watch and all sorts of good stuff. But if you tuned in yesterday, you know that at the end of the show, because it was a longer episode, I said, you know what? After thinking about it, we gotta make some predictions for some stats, whether it's tackles, sacks, turnovers, interceptions, whatever. Lo and behold, that's what we're here for today. So similar to yesterday, we're going to go by each level of the defense. We'll start with the defensive line, which will include edge rushers as well as interior defensive linemen. Then we will go to the linebackers and then close it out with the secondary to include corners, nickels, and safeties. Let's start with the defensive line. I've got a handful of stats here that we're going to predict. The way this is going to work is I am going to have certain stats where I predict the leader, second leader, third leader, so top three, and then I will have group stats as a whole, with an example being the total amount of sacks I could see from that group specifically. Let's go ahead and start with the tackle leaders. And this is a really interesting spot. ASU has had some really important defensive tackles the last couple of years who have been some of the more productive players in the tackle department. Last year, Deshaun Mallory led the Sun Devils defensive lineman with 48 tackles. He was in the top 10 on the team. The year prior to that, in 2022, Nesta Jade Silvera was number 4 in tackles with 55. The Sun Devils defensive tackles get a pretty good amount of work and a lot of opportunities to make those plays and get those stops in the backfield. Shouldn't be a surprise because ASU has had some very talented defensive linemen, but they also really rely on those interior guys. They help clean everything up for the linebackers, and the edge rushers are able to get one-on-one opportunities that way. Teams like to run against Arizona State. There you go. It all clicks. It's more often than not been one of the leaders for the team, one of the veteran guys, I should say. It was Nesta Jade Silvera in 2022. It was Deshaun Mallory in 2023. The common denominator between them was that they were transfer graduate players. ASU, once again, has a veteran player coming to the defensive line. I don't believe he is a what did I just call it? No, he is a graduate student. Jeff Clark coming from Louisville, but I did not have him number 1. I actually had Jeff Clark as number 2. Number 1, I went with CJ Fight. And my logic behind going with CJ Fight is he's taking over that role as the primary defensive tackle for the team, somebody who is going to see the field a pretty good amount of time. He's working his way to become a 3-down defensive lineman, not just a run defender, but He's working on that ability to rush the passer. And I think we're going to see that this upcoming year. And I think that the way we start to see it come to fruition is him bumping up those tackle numbers. And last year, he had shown some flashes. He had 15 tackles in pretty much every game. There wasn't too many that he sat out of, but he very, very quickly earned a starting role with the team. Part of it was necessity because there was injuries, but once he got that role, he didn't really give it back. So again, he's going into this year under the assumption for us that he's defensive tackle one. And with the production that ASU has had from that position, I think CJ Fight could be your leading tackler. Now, again, I think that Jeff Clark ends up being your number 2 tackler. He just fits that mold that we've talked about of the veteran transfer, the graduate player who has decent production at the previous school. He was at Louisville, comes to Arizona State. Time is a flat circle, and history repeats itself. So Clark, I feel pretty good about being number 2. I could justify putting him number 1. Number 3 in my tackle leaders, I'm going with Prince Dorbah. And Dorbah last year was one of the more explosive defensive linemen that ASU had. He had 30 tackles, and he tied for the team lead in sacks with 6. He also did that mostly in the first half of the year before kind of going quiet in the second half of the year between injuries and just teams catching up to him. I view Prince Dorbah as probably your primary pass rusher, as someone who's not going to get rotated too much. Now, if you listen to the show, you know I'm really big on Clayton Smith, so that might be weird to say, but I do think that Prince Dorbah is going to earn his way into more playing time as a senior on the team. Last year, BJ Green had 39 tackles. I anticipate that Dorbah is going to be right in that ballpark as well. Sack leaders. I got top 3, and I have an honorable mention. Number 1, you already know who it is. It's Clayton Smith. I have been very vocal about Clayton Smith turning into a double-digit sack guy. If he does that this year, I don't know. Like, I really want to manifest it, but BJ Green, who will be playing in the NFL one day, has had 5.5 sacks as a freshman, 2.5 as a sophomore, and 6 as a junior. ASU really spreads the wealth around when it comes to pass rushing, so there's no guarantee that Clayton Smith turns into a double-digit sack guy, but he should be able to be 6+. He should be able to be right around that 8 sack range, in my opinion, which should be good enough to lead the team. Number 2, unsurprisingly, I'm going with Prince Dorbah. Last year, he tied for the team lead in sacks with 6. He did that over most of the first half, like we discussed. If he's able to put together a consistent full 12, 13-game season, however many ASU ends up with this year, there's no reason he can't lead the Sun Devils in sacks again this year. I give Clayton Smith the edge, no pun intended, because I believe he is just one of the highest upside players on the team, and if everything clicks, he could be a beast. Number 3, if you listen to the podcast, you know who Elijah O'Neal is, and I am manifesting a breakout season for Elijah O'Neal. He has turned into one of the best-kept secrets on the team after absolutely dominating in spring ball. If he's able to continue building on that momentum that he's established for himself, I could see him end up being one of the bigger senior breakouts on the team, and who knows, maybe in the Big 12 Conference as a whole. I do have an honorable mention here because not a lot of people are talking about him, and I think we need to start a dialogue about this player, and that is going to be Zach Swanson, the transfer coming in from Texas, somebody who was a former 4-star recruit out of Arizona. He's really, really intriguing to me, and somebody that I could see some really good upside out of him. And last year, he only had a single tackle. He didn't get any sacks or anything. But from the defensive interior, Swanson intrigues me the most in terms of pass rushing upside. And this is entirely projection. But I also feel like the defensive tackle group in general is projection. We didn't really get a ton of sack production from them last year. So I'm definitely kind of going out on a limb here, but Zach Swanson has my attention. In terms of total sacks, the best case scenario, and keep in mind, this is just from the defensive line. This is not including the secondary or the linebacker group. I'm going to go with 20 as a best case scenario. I think you could see Clayton Smith and Prince Dorbach combined for 12, 14, 15 sacks, and then kind of spread the wealth between Elijah O'Neal and CJ Fight and Jeff Clark and Zach Swanson and everybody else that's building up that depth. Worst case scenario, I am saying 10, although I don't feel good about that at all. ASU last year, just between their top 3 sack artists, had 14 or 16 and a half sacks. They're going to have production this year with a group that is returning Dorba and Clayton Smith. They're adding Elijah O'Neal, and they've got some other young guys as well that are very intriguing to me. I like them a lot this year, which is why my prediction is on the higher end. I'm going with 18 sacks just from the defensive line. Last year, Arizona State as a team recorded 26 sacks, I could see ASU be in that ballpark again, and I think the defensive line is going to be a big part of that. Turnover leaders, this is going to be more geared towards forced fumbles. Number 1, Clayton Smith. He's going to get to the quarterback a lot. He's going to force a good amount of fumbles if he's able to get there. Number 2, Prince Dorbach. Goes without saying, your number 2 edge rusher should be able to wreak havoc and create turnovers. Number 3, another projection, I am saying Zach Swanson. If he is able to take that step forward as a pass rusher, which, again, I understand it's entirely projection. There's just something about Zach Swanson that really stands out to me, though. I have him number 3. Total turnovers for the defensive line, I think your best case scenario is 8. And to put that in perspective, last year ASU forced 5 fumbles. They were not super productive in the turnover department. I think they could be this year, but I still think a best case scenario is about 8. Worst case, I'm still going 2. It's lower than last year. I don't foresee this being a unit that's struggling to do that. I'm going with 5 as my prediction. This should be a unit that is at least able to match where they were last year. And again, this is just the defensive line that I'm predicting. Linebackers and the secondary will also be able to contribute to the turnovers. And we're going to go ahead and shift our focus to the linebackers here in just a moment between tackles, turnovers, and more. We'll hop into it right now. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Wherever you get your podcasts, hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. And if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Let's get us to 1,000 subscribers before the season starts. We'll find a way to celebrate. Plus, it's free. Give a little high five to your boy. You're the best fans in the world, after all. Back into the podcast now, taking a look at the linebacker spot. This is a really exciting group. I said yesterday I called it a weird group, and in a good way, it's weird. And the reason I said that is because I don't know that you really have true starters. Like, when I say that, like entrenched, like last year you had Trey Brown. The year before you had Kyle Sully. The year before that You had Merlin Robertson as well. You had Darian Butler. Like over the years, ASU has had entrenched starters at the linebacker spot. This year feels wide open. You bring in 3 crucial transfers with Cyrus Fiaseu, Keyshawn Elliott, Jordan Crook. You've got returners that are coming back who had big roles last year, like Tate Romney and Caleb McCullough. You got younger guys as well, like Tavion Thunderbird. There is a lot of intrigue at the linebacker spot. So when I was going through tackle leaders, this is difficult because it's a lot of projection because you don't necessarily have somebody that's returning or coming into the program that you could go, yeah, they're going to start every game this year. And again, it's a very good thing. I think it's a very good problem that the Sun Devils have at linebacker. Nonetheless, we're going to take our shot. First in tackles, I'm going with Tate Romney. He was tied for 4th on the team with tackles last year. He was tied for 3rd, or no, he wasn't. He was tied for 4th on the team with solo tackles with 29. If there's one guy that I feel confident about being a full-time starter, it's probably Tate Romney. But again, ASU is a very good problem to have where they could rotate a bunch of these guys. Number 2, Keyshawn Elliott. He was super duper productive at New Mexico State. He's got an inside track to be one of the starters this year. I anticipate that's probably going to be the case for him. He gets onto the field. Maybe he's your Trey Brown this year in terms of that transfer who gives you a ton of really good production. Keyshawn Elliott, number 2. Number 3, I am going with another veteran, but I'm going with Cyrus Fiaseu. Fiaseu was a really, really good player for San Diego State. And in the same way that Keyshawn Elliott was productive and could translate to Arizona State, that's kind of where I'm at with Fiaseu as well, is that he could take that similar production and apply that to a new program with a larger stage. If he's able to find that role as like their Trey Brown this year, and that is going to be a big stipulation here, is finding your next Trey Brown, Fiaseu could fit in that role and he could be one of your tackle leaders. Sack leaders, interesting conversation. I do not anticipate there's going to be a lot of sacks coming from the linebacker spot. I think most of it's going to be coming from the edge rushers. But if there's 2 guys I'm really confident to be able to get after the quarterback this year, number 1, it's Caleb McCullough. And I feel like people are going to be surprised when I say that. McCullough had a single sack last year, and in his career, he only has the single stat. He hasn't been a guy who's been really full-time on the defense. My logic is I think ASU is going to look for a rush linebacker, somebody that will be able to get a lot of opportunities to rush the passer from the middle of the defense, get behind the big guys up front. I am absolutely taking a risk here and saying, that McCullough is going to be that guy for ASU. Bold prediction. I think McCullough is going to be your leading stat guy from the linebacker spot. Number 2, Keyshawn Elliott. He was productive during his time at New Mexico State. Like I said, I'm going to pull up his stats, but he's another guy that I feel should be able to waltz his way into some really good starting opportunities for the team. He had 2.5 sacks last year. That's his career high. It's nothing crazy, but again, I don't think that ASU is going to get a ton of production in the sack department from the linebacker spot. I think that's going to be the defensive line's job. Keyshawn Elliott, my number 2. Number 3, Tate Romney. This is a lot to do with the fact that he feels like one of your starters, one of your entrenched starters. It's a projection again. He had 1 sack last year. Nothing crazy. He should be right around that mark again this year for me. Turnover leaders. This is going to include interceptions and forced fumbles. Number 1, Keyshawn Elliott. He is able to generate some pressure as a pass rusher. Check. he is able to produce in the what's it called? Passing game. I know he didn't have any interceptions in his career in New Mexico State, but if he's able to stay on the field enough, it's an easy guy that I could see being able to rack up the statistics and stuff the box score. Elliott feels like that guy for me. Number 2, Tate Romney. I know I keep mentioning him over and over again, but there's a reason why. I do not know if Tate Romney is going to be a big turnover guy this year. For what it's worth, he did have ASU's first turnover last year in a fumble recovery off of a botch snap from Caleb Williams against USC. He had 4 pass deflections and a single sack. So there's a chance that he could generate some turnovers, but I don't think it's anything too crazy. Last guy, Zyrus Fiaseu, same logic as Keyshawn Elliott. He's a good football player. He could be in that Trey Brown role. I foresee an opportunity for him to be on the field enough to have those opportunities to force turnovers. Finally, total turnovers. Best case scenario, I have 7 here. I don't know how good I feel about 7. I feel like your edge rushers will generate your sacks and your defensive backs will generate your interceptions. Your linebackers, in my opinion, are going to be really good tackling machines. I don't know what else you could expect. Worst case scenario, I'm still saying 2. It's enough, I guess, as long as everybody else is producing. My prediction, I'm still going a little on the higher end. I'm going to say 5. 5 turnovers, whether it's interceptions or forced fumbles for the linebacker unit. Finally, we're going to step in and take a look at the secondary in just a moment with interceptions, passer rating, and more. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I love sports and I love them so much. I just don't want them to stop, but the playoffs are done and we have fewer games. Sports just aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. One more time, wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And if you haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, go and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 before the season starts. We will find a way to celebrate together. Secondary. There's a lot of stuff here, so we're going to go rapid fire. Tackle leaders. Last year was Shamari Simmons. That's my prediction this year. Shamari Simmons is your tackles leader in the secondary. Would not surprise me if he led the entire team in tackles again. His transition from Austin Peay at an FCS level to Arizona State at an FBS level, Division I level, a Power 5 level, pretty staggering. He picked up very quickly on how to play against tougher, higher competition. Should be able to repeat what he did last year. Number 2 in tackles, I'm going with Cole Martin. And my logic behind that is last year, Jordan Clark was 6th on the team in tackles with 50. Playing out of that nickel spot near the line of scrimmage, they played him at safety a little bit. He got a lot of opportunities to fly around the field. Cole Martin is going to step into that same role. He is every bit as talented and somebody who will quickly become a fan favorite. He's going to make a lot of plays this year. You'll see that he's somebody that I mentioned a lot upcoming with the remainder of the stats we predict. Cole Martin, number 2 on tackles. Number 3, I'm going with LT Welsh, and I know that that's going to catch some more people by surprise. You'd think I'd go with another safety after Chris Edmonds last year. Chris Edmonds last year was the second leading tackler at the safety spot with 71. But I'm going with Welsh. My logic is last year, Ro Torrance had 37 tackles for the team as their number one corner. ASU is looking for another number one corner, and there's no guarantee that Welsh is instantly going to come in and play at the level that Ro Torrance was. Teams are going to want to throw against Arizona State. I don't know who they're going to pick on. What I do know is Welsh is your number one corner until further notice. Predicting he's the number one corner means he's going to get the most opportunities to make plays and make tackles. Welsh is my number 3 projected tackles leader. Interception leaders. This is not a list that should surprise anyone. Number 1, Xavier Alford, friend of the show and somebody who showed a ton of upside in training camp last year before he was ruled ineligible by the NCAA for their 2-time transfer policy. He's back. He's determined. He is the 100-yard landlord, as his Twitter handle shows. And this is a player that's going to be playing with a lot to prove and a chip on his shoulder. Xavier Alford leading the team in interceptions. Just off the top of my head, I'll say 5. I'll say that he gets a lot of interceptions this year. It would be crazy, but I'm going all in. Number 2 on interceptions leaders, Shamari Simmons. ASU did not have anyone with double-digit interceptions last year. That should change this year. You would imagine it's probably going to be with one of the corners one of the defensive backs who's going to have the most opportunities to be a starter. Shamari Simmons is a plug-and-play starter. I got him number 2 on interceptions. Number 3, Cole Martin. Cole Martin is going to be on the field a lot this year. There's a very realistic opportunity that he has the most snaps of anyone in the secondary because he can play all over the place. That's going to give him opportunities to get turnovers. I'm thinking that that's what ends up happening. Honorable mention, Kamari Wilson. Wilson, a former 4-star, a very high 4-star, transfer from Florida. I know that I haven't talked about him as much as I should. And I don't know if other people are, but I can speak for myself and say that I'm not hyping him up the way that I should be hyping him up. So here's my introduction to hyping him up. Super talented player. There's going to be a lot of rotation in the secondary this year. The safety spot has a ton of depth. Kamari Wilson could very easily advertise himself as the best player in the secondary. If it's not Xavier Alford or Shamari Simmons, he's right there and could outplay those two. Interceptions leaders, I think Kamari Wilson is a sleeper to watch. Total interceptions. Best case scenario, I'm saying 10. And like I said for linebacker, I don't really know if you're going to get a lot of interceptions from that position. It's going to come from the secondary, which is where I'm got this logic. ASU, best case scenario, 10 interceptions from their secondary. You spread that out between, if Xavier Alford gets the 5 I'm predicting, you only have to spread out 5 more to some of the better corners on the team and the ridiculous amount of depth that you have at safety. Feels easy to do. Worst case, I have 2, but I'm going to bump it up and I'm going to say 4. This is not going to be a unit that struggles with turnovers once again this year. They will build off it. I'm not saying it's going to be a ton, but only 5 interceptions last year. I don't see that happening again from the team. I'll say that the secondary is able to do that almost by themselves. My prediction, once again on the higher end, I'm saying 8. Alford gets 5. You only have to get 3 more for the rest of the group. Even if Alford only gets 3, that's only 5 more from a very talented group. Seems easy to do. Passer rating. For what it's worth, college football passer rating blows my mind. I don't know how it works. Everyone's always in the 140s and 150s. I don't think there's a cap on it either. I think you could be climbing into the 300s, 400s, whatever. I'm saying that for throwing in these guys' coverage, I'll say Cole Martin has the best opposing passer rating. He's arguably the best player in the secondary. He's someone that's going to get the most opportunity, in my opinion. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he outsnaps everyone. He's a good football player. put 2 and 2 together. I think he has the best passer rating allowed. Second, LT Welsh. This is the number 1 corner for me. If he is able to immediately translate and be a good player, typically throwing at number 1 corners results in a lower passer rating. Number 3, Xavier Alford. If he gets a lot of interceptions, that's immediately going to impact the potential of the quarterback to have a good passer rating throwing against this guy. Turnover leaders, interceptions, forced fumbles. Xavier Alford 1, Shamari Simmons 2, Kamari Wilson 3. That's pretty much what I'm anticipating here. Is it's going to be the safeties that are going to contribute the most amount of interceptions and turnovers and stuff like that. Cole Martin, really interesting because he could be that Jordan Clark role and play some safety as well. He could contribute. He's got ball skills. That's my stat predictions. We went through the defensive line and predicted sacks and tackles. Went through linebacker, predicted tackles, interceptions, forced fumbles, and all that. Secondary, tackles, interceptions, passer rating, total turnovers. Let me know what you guys think. Am I too high on someone? Am I too low on someone? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. If you have not hit subscribe on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 before the season starts, and we'll find a way to celebrate that, of course. Once again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. We will be back again tomorrow with a little bonus episode to make up for not being here on Wednesday. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.